We love supporting and promoting the creators of musical theater throughout the world, and we would love to have your support as well. Go to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the Become a Patron button, because a supportive community is a strong community. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanov. Today, we are heading down to my second home, well, virtually, New York City, to talk with our next guest. He's a writer, artistic director, and acted in one of my favorite musicals of all time, Five Guys Named Mo. Let's waste no more time. You know what? I'm so sorry. That was terrible. But you know what? I'm leaving it. I did it.
Yes,
it's terrible. Let's welcome to the show, Darryl Reuben Hall. Darryl, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, John Paul. I love that. No more time.
And thank you for not leaving after that pun, just turning off Zoom.
No. I am here to stay. We're going to ride this wave together. So yes, that was hilarious.
Awesome. So I want to take it back to the beginning. When you were growing up, were you always into theater and musical theater? Or is that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
That's an excellent question, because I always have to explain to people that I never ever thought that I would become a professional artist, actor, singer, dancer, whatever, ever in my life, never. And as a child, what I remember most is, like with all the other kids in the neighborhood, I always wanted to organize like everybody's birthday party. I remember the Jerry Lewis telethon used to come on, and there would be like these carnival fundraiser things. And every year I would order the kits and, let me do this. But I never pulled off the carnival, but it was always so exciting. But then the other thing, I always imagine that I was competing in the Summer Olympics in the gymnastics thing. So all of us would be running in the backyard and flipping, and I couldn't flip. I could do back bends and all of that. But what I could do was a split. So I would always win like the gold medal because I could do a split, So I always had that inkling as a child. But moving forward to high school, I was in the band. I started in music education in the band. I played percussion section leader, drum section leader. And I started that in 7th grade. Still didn't have an inkling of my future. And then I went to middle school, of course, and then high school. And there was one particular high school that I just had to grow up and be in this marching band. I thought they were absolutely amazing. And I have to give them a shout out. That is the William Marion Rains Marching High School Band of Jacksonville, Florida. And that's what I did. That was a goal of mine as a child. And I grew up and became a band member at William Rains High School. And I was section leader there as well. And we had this reputation of creating these very soulful halftime shows. And we had a dance committee, which within the band, and most of those persons were the section leaders. So I was just like club, whatever, hip hop, whatever they want to call it. And I remember the drama teacher, she stopped me one day. She said, Darryl, I saw you dancing on the field the other day after school with the band. And have you ever thought about doing it professionally? And I really seriously did not have a clue as to what she was really talking about. I had no idea. I probably had heard of ballet. We were not exposed. I would like to say that in Jacksonville, you have the north side and the south side, and the north side is predominantly Black side. And I really was not exposed to professional theater, the arts, dance, any of that. Of course, I had heard of plays and kindergarten play, the Easter program at the church, all of those types of things. But just to pursue it professionally, never had anyone really guiding me in that arena. And so Mrs. Parker said that to me, and it kind of went in one ear and out the other, but it did stick with me. I can't say that it fully went out the other ear. It did stick with me. But then I went to Florida A&M University. I was in the marching band there. And then after that, I went back home because I was part of my church then, heavily in the church then, and stayed home for a long time until I went back to school at University of Florida on a scholarship. And that's when I started this whole thing. I still had this passion in me. And I actually have a degree in architecture. I graduated from University of Florida with a degree in architecture. And Disney came up one summer. and they held their auditions on the campus. I got hired for that. I got into the University of Florida Gospel Choir. That was a singing thing that I had to do. And the first year I was there, I auditioned for the University of Florida Dance Company. I think they've changed the name now. And like I said, I really had no training in anything. I had no training in singing. I had no training in dance. It was just something that I felt that was part of me that I had to do. Like it was my gift and my purpose on this earth. That's how I look at it now. And so in between all of my architecture classes, which I was really bored with, I ended up getting like 3 scholarships while at University of Florida. I studied my senior year over in Vicenza, Italy. I was bored out of my wits. It's just, I just bored. I was like, oh my God, do I have to draw another line? Do I have to cut another model, paste, where's the glue? And staying up all night long doing these projects. And it was just, and I made A's some of the times. And then when I got burnt out and just didn't like it anymore, of course, those A's dropped down a little lower, but I graduated. And after I graduated from University of Florida, I had that job at Disney. And so I moved to Orlando. I gave my parents the inkling that, and there was a firm that was acting somewhat interested in hiring me, but I wasn't really returning the calls. I was like, I do not want to spend the rest of my days in a building, in a space, in an architecture firm, drafting and this and that, and look at this window and look at this floor plan. And I just did not want to do all of that. It was not me. And I auditioned for the Orlando Opera Company. And it's so funny because they had posted this audition notice like 3 months prior, 2 or 3 months prior to the audition, so that you could prepare. I think it was 3 arias, 2 in a foreign language and 1 in English. And like I said, I had never studied voice. So I don't know what I was thinking when I thought, oh, I'll just drive to the mall, pick up a cassette tape. And we were actually using cassette tapes then, a cassette tape, and I'll just learn the aria from, the tape. So like I said, I had never studied anything, and I did study Italy when we had to go to Vicenza. That was a requirement, but still to sing it, I had never studied that. So I waited and probably could have gotten some assistance, some help from professional coaches or whatever. I waited for maybe a week or 2 weeks before the audition. Mind you, they posted it like 2 or 3 months earlier for you to prepare this. So I bought this cassette tape, took it home, popped it into the player, and I was like, what in the world are they saying? What are they doing? I can't do this. And all this stuff. And I was like, no, this is not gonna work. So I waited for the audition date. I went to the audition. It was held at a church, I think off of Orange Blossom Trail Road or something like that. Colonial Drive. I can't believe I remember that. And I drove to the church and I walked to the front entrance of the church and I opened the door and I remember seeing the judging panel out in the pews, and there was one person up in the pulpit singing. And I think she was up there with her hands clasped and I was like, oh God, I need to go home. Why am I here? And so then I said, no, I'm here. I drove over here. I'm going to wait until she finishes, and I'm going to let them know that I don't have any arias prepared. Should I stay? Should I go home? So I waited and I walked up to the committee. It was like, excuse me, I'm here to audition, but I don't have any arias prepared. And I know his name now. I didn't know him then, but Brian turned to me and said, so what do you have? And I said, well, I have some show tunes. And they were like, okay, well, we'll hear those, but you have to wait in the back. So I go into the back room and everyone's like all just, dressed. I was just a graduate student. Like I didn't know anything, I wasn't like dressed horribly, but I didn't go dressed up in a suit, and they're all talking to each other. And, oh, I think, oh yeah, it's Professor so-and-so. Oh yeah, I studied with Dr. da-da-da-da, all this stuff. And so I got into a little corner because I can be an introvert. It's funny how I'm an extrovert on stage, but when I'm off stage, I will crawl into a corner in a minute.
Yeah.
And so I filled out this paperwork, and it felt like it didn't happen this way, but it felt like they skipped over everyone else in the room and was like, oh, let's just call this little kid out or whatever. And so send him home. So I went out and they were like, what do you have? And when I was at University of Florida, I did take a musical theater course as an elective. what do they call that?
Yeah, an elective. Yeah.
Yeah, elective. And so they said, what do you have? I said, oh, I had done Be a Lion from the Wiz, which was, I had to sing that because it always felt right in my range, my vocal range. And then I did Oklahoma. And of course, they did not know what Be a Lion was in the Wiz. So, it's an opera company. So they said, okay, we're here, Oklahoma. So I'm trying to make it sound like legit as possible. I'm not really, I can do legit, but that's not really what I am to the core of me.
Yeah.
And so they're like, Oklahoma. I say, okay, let me just try to do this, legit. Oklahoma, whatever, trying to do all this stuff. And so then, okay, we'll hear the other one. And I said, well, I'm probably not going to get hired for this anyway. So I'm just going to take this to church and riff it up and down. And so I blew Be a Lion down. Like I just blew it down. I love the song. And they asked me a series of questions, do you read music? And I was in the band, so I read instrumental music. I was not a vocal reader, and which is what I think they meant, but I didn't let them know that. They asked the question, do you read music? Yes, I read music. So one day I had just graduated from University of Florida, moved to New York, Orlando, and had not had my phone turned on yet. So I went to work at Disney and they had a message on the call board, Darryl, please call Orlando Opera Company. And I was like, oh, I got it. And I called and I got it. And the first rehearsal, they started talking about pay. And I didn't know it was a paying job or anything. It was just something that I saw and noticed. And I was like, let me go to this audition. This is what I really want to do, is perform. And still at this time, I did not think that I would end up being a professional actor. I just never, even now, even then at that point, I still had not had that thought in my head. So that pretty much was the start of it. And then from there, it just was a series of steps. Like I got the union card. I can tell you all of that. I would like to share it if you have time. So it was just really a huge series of steps that led me to where I am now. And I've been in New York since 1996. So
wow, that's crazy. That
it was.
That you know what, you hear stories of people, I've been known since I was 2 and 3. I wanted to do musical theater, and then I love stories where what I discovered my wanting to do it later in life as well. But yeah, going through. So question is, what type of skills do architecture translate into musical theater and singing?
Okay, well, here's one thing, and I'm going to skip around some.
Yeah.
One thing, I do own my own theater company now, Stage Award Theatrical Company. I've had it. I started it, I would say we started programming in maybe 1999. Then I got the 501c3 status in 2001. And I designed the sets. Like if we were doing The Wiz, if we did The Color Purple, if we did To Kill a Mockingbird or Driving Miss Daisy, I designed all the sets. That's the one thing that I could say that I still have with me is those drafting skills. Nice. To be able to take the edge and measure, and that's what we do. I can design the walls. I do all of that. If we have to cut a window here. So all of that. And then at one point I used to build a model, because the larger theatrical institutions, they'll actually build the set design so that it's a 3D representation of what it should look like, a model. I don't do that. It takes me too much back to architecture. I'm like, okay, where's the glue? Let me do this. No, I don't do that much anymore. If someone asked for it, I would, but I'm usually very visual in how I explain that something should look, or how it should be built, or what it should look like. So I would say that would be the comparison, and that would be the benefit of me studying architecture in college.
I love when two different weird, it's not weird, but weird for musical theater skill sets can translate over and use them. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, and then even when you're staging and directing, just the use of the space, if something should be symmetrical, if it should be asymmetrical, I still remember like all of that. So it kind of never really leaves.
Yeah.
And but the more, I would say, the more structural elements of architecture, no, the stuff that is really, really boring, no. I don't care about the brackets, and I don't. No, no, we won't. No, enough of that.
Nice.
After I sang with Orlando Opera for 3 seasons, the first opera that when I was hired, we took the Mikado over to France, and
Mm.
they didn't take the entire company. They chose singers from each section that they wanted to go with them. And I was a newbie, but they still chose me to go. So of course, when I get over there, one of the older members is like, Darryl, you know, there are lots of people back home that really have a problem with you being here. And I was like, I really don't care. It's a shame that people tell people things like this.
Yeah.
It's like if they, the director and all of them chose me over the other people been in the company for years, that is not, I have nothing to do with it. If
No.
they liked my performance better or voice better, then it's what it is. So anyway, did that for a long time, stayed in Orlando for 3 years until I got a cruise ship job. And that job took me to South Florida. And then all the while, one of my very dear friends, god sister, our parents, you know, were very, very tight coming up, and she and I know each other basically from the crib up.
Yeah.
She was into the Miss Florida pageant circuit, and she was beginning to branch out with her entertainment career. And I remember calling her one day. I was down in South Florida, and I was like, Angela, I was like, I don't know, Florida, just the work and, you know, being a Black artist. And sometimes, you know, you get in these shows and they just want to put you in the ensemble, all this type of thing. But you know that your voice is, if not better than, just as good as someone playing a principal role, you know. And she was like, she laid it right out for me. You know how your real friends lay it out.
Yeah.
Darryl, I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. And I still tease her about it to this day. I don't want to hear it anymore. You're a triple threat. And these guys, because she had moved to New York by this point. And she's like, you need to move to New York, but you need to get your equity card and just going on and on and on. And it was in the, you know, the lovingly sister
Yeah.
correction that needs to be told. And I listened and I was like, wow, she's right. I've outgrown Florida. That's how I looked at it. Like I did all the theme parks in Central Florida. I did Busch Gardens in Tampa. I did all Disney, Universal Studios, Cypress Gardens. I did dinner theater there, industrials, commercials, everything. And I was still bored. Like I was bored in architecture. I was like, there's more, there's more. And so Sesame Street National Tour came. I was living in South Florida. Sesame Street National Tour was coming to Orlando for auditions. And I knew some other people from Disney who had gotten their equity card from Sesame Street National Tour. And I was like, okay, so here's an opportunity for me to get my equity card. Let me drive up from South Florida to Orlando for this audition. So please tell me why this Saturday that I hopped in my car that should have been a 2-hour drive, 2.5 hours at the minimum, at the very least, to get there. And I get on I-95 North and there was road construction. And only one lane was open from like Fort Lauderdale all the way up to almost Central Florida. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm gonna get there late. I'm gonna get there at the end. And at first I was like, okay, just wasn't moving at all, one lane. So I literally got to the audition at the end of the audition. I kid you not. She was wrapping up the last combination. I stood on the side. I said, I'm so sorry, but I just drove up from South Florida. There was road construction. She said, let me wrap up this last group and I'll see you. And she wrapped up that last thing, sent everybody home. And it was really a blessing in disguise because she got to see me one-on-one to see that I could do everything. And then I booked the job and I got my equity card. That's exactly what happened. And I moved up here to New York with Angela, but in the meanwhile, because of my hometown being not so up on Black theater, I knew that I wanted to start a Black theater company. I knew that there should be more opportunities. There should be someone in the community teaching the entire city, you know, about Black theater. And that was something that I largely wanted to do. So I always felt that let me move to New York, learn from the cream of the crop, because I didn't want just a typical theater. I didn't study theater in college, you know, not as a major. And so I don't want to just throw up something, you know, the backyard theater company or whatever. So I moved here in 1996 And after I got the equity card, and then I started everything that I did here, and I meditated on the name of it because I wanted to be something very special, have a personal meaning for me, and came up with Stage Aurora Theatrical Company Theater that enlightens. And to date, we've produced over 200 productions. We've garnered a ton of awards, but it's been a lot of like mountains to climb. It is so difficult, and the fundraising. And I remember when September 11th happened and the economy took a turn and funding took a turn. Now here we are with the pandemic, but COVID kind of brought some funding to some organizations so that we could sustain our operations. And that was pretty much it, that I knew that I wanted to have my own theater company. And I hired Broadway artists, guest artists. And now I'm looking to branch out in New York with the 501c3 here, because now I have it in both Florida and in New York.
Very nice. Congratulations on everything.
Yeah.
And thank you to that traffic on I-95 for messing things up, but in a good way.
And I will have to be honest about that, because I'm a very spiritual person. So I'm the whole while, I'm like, God, why does this have to happen to me? I don't get it. Why? This just always me. Why? I'm all just frantic. And I get there, then like 3 months later, I'm like, oh well, I remember I had this conversation with you, So, and so that was really it was really a blessing in disguise, and I did not see it that way. I didn't.
Not at that moment when you're sitting behind the wheel. How could you, right?
Not at that moment, exactly.
So I love what I've been to the website of the Stage Aurora, and I love what you've done and everything. And you've got outreach programs which are fantastic. Tell us a little bit about that and what they do and how they help.
Because I create original musicals, and this is going to line up with that question. I have a musical now that I started really in 1996, and it's finally getting to the point to where it's nearing completion. But when I submitted this project to a development program, and it was chosen. And one of the producers of this program, he and his wife run it, Tim and Pamela Kashani. I don't think they'll mind me mentioning their name, but it's a theater accelerated program, and they're Broadway producers. And when they interviewed me for this program, he actually said, Darryl, it's amazing what you've done with the kids. It's really amazing. This is exactly what I told him. I said, they are probably the most rewarding part of this organization, especially, and he always gives me a shout out, like on social media or whatever. But Andre Troutman is one. When you've seen a child in your programming from 7th grade, I think he started with me 7th grade, so he probably would have been 13 or 14, to now being a professional musician in California. There's AJ, she is now married, a mom, but she's a music teacher. She got a music scholarship, and they all give me credit their parents give me credit for introducing them to theater. But they came to my organization through the summer camp. We did a Performing Arts Summer Institute sponsored by the Jacksonville Children's Commission. And the first year they did it, I think it was 10 weeks. And I think the years after that, the money started dwindling with the commission itself. So then we would only do like a 6-week camp or something like that. But that's the most rewarding thing, because there are tons of others. Takira Kelly, she moved up here. She got her degree in theater. Kayla Grace, they always tease me because I call her first name and middle name. That's not her, Grace is not her last name, it's her middle name. And it just has a ring to it. Kayla Grace, that's her ring. And so she has her degree in theater, but they were kids. They were like middle schoolers, and I don't think elementary, but even now I can say the city of Jacksonville is now aware of Black theater productions like August Wilson. So they're all doing all these plays and musicals now, which Stage Aurora brought to the city of Jacksonville. Before that, it was nothing. Every now and then, maybe one theater might do something, once or twice a year, but now it's more open and more diverse, I think. So yeah.
Well, congratulations on starting that program and everything you've done. The theater world, and just the world in general, I think needs more people like yourself who, you're doing what you love, but you're also helping people and bringing
Yeah.
you know, more people into theater and to discover it. It always surprises me, but it doesn't, how few people go to the theater. Like I heard a statistic where only 1 in 4 kids have been in a theater, and I'm like,
Right. Right.
it just
Right.
it boggles my mind, we need
Right.
people like yourself to help
Yeah.
foster
Yeah.
the theatrical world, because it's
Yes.
for everybody.
Yes. One other program is the 100 Youth Voices musical theater program, and that would be an after-school program where we taught the kids musical theater. We would just, let's say, for example, there's the musical number that's in Sister Act,
Mhm.
Sister Act 2, Sister, whichever one has the joyful, joyful Lord, that one.
Yeah,
I think it's Sister Act 2, but the kids know it.
yeah.
So because you get to do the hip hop moves and they do all of that and they sing it, they would already know the number. I couldn't remember the lyrics. They would already know the number. And we would use those moments to introduce to them, hey, this is musical theater. It's literally called musical theater. This is that. You learn this. You have to learn how to stand on stage. If it's center stage, stage right, stage left, we taught all of that. Down stage, up stage, cross on the diagonal, profile, all of it. The lighting, choreography, they know those terms. I didn't have a lot of time to actually teach musical theater dance, but we would do simple things. And sometimes I would allow the kids, the participant, to choreograph their
Mhm.
own steps because they would probably know a whole lot more than I would, so, but those were some really, really good days. And I think sometimes it's easier to even work with the kids because they want to be there and they want to learn.
Yep.
Some of the other productions with the adults, that's a whole different interview.
Yes.
That's a totally different interview.
Yeah, for sure. And the kids are always fun. I love working with
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
because they have this energy that I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
But they
Right.
also, a lot of them, I'm going to guess, and I could be wrong, in this program aren't necessarily going to go into that as a career, but just have
Right.
a passion and a love, and it builds their confidence, and it gives them skills that they're going to translate,
Right.
like your architecture. You never
Yes.
realized it could be
Yeah.
used in musical theater,
Yeah.
but what they learn in musical theater will be taken out and used in the real world.
Yes. Even when I did the outreach programs with the youth, I never thought that, I would have 5 students that would go to college and get scholarships and get degrees in theaters. I was really just trying to introduce it to them, but I never really sat down to think that,
Yeah.
they're going to go graduate and get their degree in theater. And I just never thought. And so when they would contact me and I would, oh my God, you did what? And the moms would tell me, I was like, wow, okay, all right. And then that's when I really realized the impact of what I've done. That's when I really realized it. Yeah.
It's funny, you never realize, like you said, the impact until later, because my lady friend, she's a teacher, and she teaches thousands of kids. But
Yes.
when they come to them after and say, Miss,
Yeah.
you made a difference in my life, you don't even realize it. And when the people say it to me, it's weird, to be honest. It's like,
Yeah.
I did that. Oh, okay.
Right.
Like that wasn't my plan, but
Right.
I'm glad.
Right. Yeah, you just never know because it's so much hard work and you have to stay focused on the task at hand. Like I have to always think, okay, first day of rehearsal, meet, greet, next day, who is this music director here on time? Okay, go work with this. I'm not thinking at that time, okay, this kid here will be this by the time they're 20. No, I'm not thinking. I'm trying to get the show opened before the audience comes in. I want the parents to be happy and not disgruntled. Like, what did you do? What is this plot? I never ever heard that. I never heard that. So, but we were the first to do Disney High School Musical, I believe, in the state of Florida. Like when it first came out, it was a huge hit for Disney on TV. And only because of my affiliations here in New York that I knew that the rights had come out, because I overheard some other producers talking about it at a conference. So I asked one of them, I was like, hey, I want to do Disney High School Musical. And that's when you know the right people, then you can get something done. And we were the first organization in Florida to produce it. So it was a big deal. We had 120 kids came out and audition and I think 85 ended up doing it. And I had 3 different casts. I had 3 different casts. I was like, and I'm not the kind of person, I know the purpose of understudies or whatever, but I like to give everybody an opportunity to do it. So
For sure.
that's why we had 3 different casts. It was a lot of talent. And I was like, I'm not just gonna have one cast to do all of this. So yeah.
You have way more energy than I do to deal with 3 different casts of 85 kids.
I had it at that time. That was a while ago. I don't know if I can do it now. We're actually prepping for Shrek Junior now, and I'm trying to find a staff to put it together for me because I don't want to handle the whole thing like that. It's a lot of work.
Well, maybe one of our listeners are like, oh, I could give you a hand if they're in Florida. So,
Yeah.
reach out to the theater company. And
Yes, yes. Even now, the email is stageaurora@hotmail.com, or you can go to the website, stageaurora.org, and there's an email tab on there as contact@stageaurora.org. So yes.
Perfect. Well, let's see what happens when we get this out there.
I hope so. I hope so.
So
Yeah.
you've got an upcoming performance, I believe, of the show Dinner with Booker T.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I was in Milwaukee at Milwaukee Repertory doing The Color Purple, and we were in rehearsals. It was a payday. We had dinner break, and I just decided to walk back to my room, and I just to deposit the check into my account or whatever. And I was sitting on the room floor, and I just flipped on the TV, and I stopped it on the PBS channel because it was airing a black and white documentary, and it was the Roosevelts, Ken Burns's The Roosevelts. The moments that I was in there, they talked about in 1901, Booker T. Washington was the first Negro to dine at the White House with Theodore Roosevelt, and and the Southern uproar and this and that, and my ears went doo doo doo. And I was like, what is this? And it was just the way that they put that segment together it just reached it. That's when I like to think that the seed was planted in me. I knew that I had to turn this into a theatrical work. So the first phase of it, I went back to the theater after the dinner break, went back to rehearsal, and I started researching the whole thing on their computers while I would be at the theater. And it was actually called The Dinner. It was a 6-person cast production piece. And we did the run of The Color Purple. We're out there for about 3 or 4 months, or what, 3 months. And I flew back to New York, and I had only started the research of it. But some type of way, there was a notice or something popped up on my page. I can't remember how it happened, but it was advertising the Midtown International Theater Festival. And I just thought to myself, I was like, oh, they probably already have all of their plays already in the festival. So I decided to email them anyway, and I didn't even have a script. I just had pages of research. I just had pages of research, and I was like, okay. So then I got a response. Like, I didn't really think to get a response. And the response was, yes, all the slots are full, but we'll keep you on the waiting list or whatever. Yeah. So then 2 or 3 days later, somebody dropped out, and I got another notification. Oh, we just lost these slots. Do you want these times? But you'll have to make the script longer. Like, I had pages to read, so I knew that it was not a script. And so I wrote back, yes. I think that's when they wrote back, okay, but you'll have to make the script longer. So then I started all this research. And like I said, it was 6-person cast. And so long story short, after that, and I didn't realize it, but it was a festival. I didn't realize that critics would be coming. Like, I don't know, my head was not in that area at all. I wasn't thinking that at all. And when I got to the theater, that after we had opened, the guys in the dressing room was like, oh, Darryl, did you know we got a review? And I was like, what? We got a, what? I said, oh my God, no. And, but I knew it was riveting material, so I wasn't too worried about it. When you hear the work itself is based on historical documents, and it's shocking. It is just so, the hatred and evil that was like spread because a Black man and a white man had dinner together was just shocking. And so I submitted it, moving forward, I submitted it to the National Black Theater Festival at the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019. And they reached out to me and asked me, did I ever consider converting it into a one-man show? And because I wanted to be in the festival, that's a pretty prestigious festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, every 2 years. And I said, yeah. And so then they asked me to like put a new video together and give us an idea of how it would work. So I had to throw this stuff together. I had to improvise the scenes. I went to one of the rehearsal rooms at Ripley Grier Pearl Studios, and I just kept like improvising. I tried to go by the dialogue as much as I knew, and I pieced it all together, sent to them, and then I got accepted into the festival. And that's what started this whole one-man show journey thing, from me being out there. I love how you can just trace the steps and progress of something that was meant to be. I just happened to go back to my room on dinner break, and I'm looking and let me stop the TV on this channel. And those few minutes that I was in the room, you're talking about Booker T. Washington and Theodore Roosevelt. And I was like, wow, that from that moment on, it just stirred. And so now, before COVID, the pandemic began, it was supposed to play the Sheen Center in New York, and it was supposed to play a huge church, AME church here in New York. Both of those got postponed. But then I got other bookings down in Florida. So I performed it at Emerald Coast Theater in Miramar Beach, Florida, Amelia Musical Playhouse in Amelia Islands, in Jacksonville, Florida, at Stage Aurora, my home city. And that's it. Now we're playing Mad Cow Theater in Orlando. And that actually is opening next Friday, February 18th, and running through February 27th.
Very cool. Very cool. I'd love to. We have listeners all over the world, the UK, Canada, Australia, etc. And I've heard of Booker T. Washington up in Canada, but I don't really know anything about him. So if you could tell us just a little bit about him, because people in the UK might never have heard of him, where, my proximity to the States is closer.
Yes. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, and all of this is in my show. And the show is actually based on his autobiography, Up from Slavery. So he's talking about how he was born in slavery. He was biracial. His mother was a slave. His father was a white man whom he never knew. That's actual dialogue from the show. But being born in slavery, he was working in the coal mines one day, and he overheard two coal miners talking about a school that was far away that taught colored boys and girls how to read. And he had this fascination with education and trying to learn to read. And so he strategized this plan at a young age, very young age. And there was this woman in the town, Mrs. Ruffner. I play 14 characters in the show. It's making me think about the show. And Mrs. Ruffner was very strict with the boys who would serve her, the boys that came to work for her. And he hated the coal mines. He only cared about an education. So he begged his mom to go to Mrs. Ruffner for this job that she had run another boy away. Like, she was just so strict. People, they were like, oh my God, can't work with this woman, And so he said that she ended up being one of his very best friends because she was so strict. And what happened when he started for Hampton, which is the school where he started his education, they were talking about Hampton Normal and Institute, which is now Hampton University. But when he got there, he was living in Malden, and he had to travel 500 miles to Hampton. He begged rides in both cars and wagons. It sounds like I'm quoting dialogue because I am. But it's so descriptive because once he got there, he had no money. He was a slave, born a slave. He had no money. He had to sleep under a sidewalk because he had no money for housing. I mean, for days. And he said he woke up in the morning, realized that he was near a ship, and he went to the ship and asked the captain, could he help unload the cargo for money to buy food. And the captain let him do that for a number of days. He saved his money. He continued on to Hampton, and he finally got to Hampton. Of course, he was dirty. He had been sleeping on the sidewalk. He said the head teacher just looked at him like, what in the, she didn't say it like that, but like, who are you? Why are you here? And so she told him to go stand in another room. And he said he was so upset because he saw all the other students just coming in, going to class, but he had to go stand in this room. She went over to the room minutes later and said, here's a broom, sweep the room. And he said he knew this was his examination into the school. And he knew because of Mrs. Ruffner, how she always had him sweeping and cleaning her house. Like he knew how to clean it. So he didn't sweep it not just one time, he swept it 2, 3 times. Then he took the dusting cloth and he went over it 4 times. She came back in, she tested the furniture and everything to see it. And she was like, oh, you'll do well for this institution. He became the school janitor. And that's how he paid through school. And one of the teachers there taught him how to orate, how to be a speaker. So there was a general there who had been contacted by a school over in Tuskegee that they were looking for a white man to come start the school in Tuskegee, Alabama. And the general wrote back and said, well, I don't know a white man, I know a colored man. If you would be willing to take a colored man, I know one whom I'd like to recommend. And he told him Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington agreed to go give it a try. And it was just one thing after another. He went to Tuskegee. Of course, he was very learned in school for them to want to recommend him, very responsible. And he started Tuskegee, which is now Tuskegee University. He started that in a hen hack in an old dilapidated church. It actually says when it rained, it would rain so badly inside the building that one of the students would have to very kindly leave his lessons and hold an umbrella over Mr. Washington while he listened to the recitations of the others. So all of these things, this was putting him in the limelight, all of these obstacles, which I don't even think, when I think about the autobiography, he didn't look at any of it as a hindrance. He didn't look at poverty as a hindrance. He didn't look at any of these issues as obstacles. They made him strong and made him who he became to be. And because he was getting this notoriety for starting the school, for being learned and being able to speak, he got invited to speak at what's called the Atlanta Exposition. He gave what is known as the Atlanta Compromise speech. That speech alone just went, what we would say today, viral. It went viral. It just caught fire. And he, from that point on, he had he was being invited to dine with all types of dignitaries and presidents and leaders. And that's how he got invited to the White House with President Theodore Roosevelt. And they were there, and he just calmly asked him would he like to stay for dinner. He stayed for dinner, but a reporter saw the guest list and printed it the next day. Booker T. Washington of Tuskegee, Alabama, dined at the White House last night. And that just went crazy. And there's a section of the show I've never had anyone to tell me personally that they don't like this section or they are offended by it. But I had a critic, she did not mention that. She just said, she said I did a very earnest job as Washington, but she said, but I had to ask my colleagues, why is this particular, section in the show and but it's there for a reason. And if you know the poem, like I won't mention the poem, but there's a poem that was literally printed in newspapers about a Black man, which they called them Negroes then, a Negro and a white man dining together. That is very disgusting. It is absolutely horrifying, the language. But then, he still traveled on his journey of life, educating, speaking to groups of people, and all the while, because he had the right network, he was able to raise money. And people, I think Carnegie was one, he may have donated like $10,000 to build a building on the campus of Tuskegee. So he knew the people that could help him get to where he was, and that's what he needed, and that's what he did. So in long story short, Booker T. Washington was a slave. He became I would say the leading Negro speaker for the Black race, for the Negro race, just from his education and prominence that he gained in his life by meeting the different leaders and people that could help catapult him to success to some degree. So, and then the thing about that, and I think we all have thorn, I'll call them a thorn in the flesh. You know, everybody doesn't like everybody. So even people of the Negro race didn't like him. They called him a sellout, you know, that he, you know, so it's just never a easy task of just trying to attain what you believe you should be doing. But what I love about it is when I first started reading his autobiography, I just could not believe, you know, just to see that he had to sleep under a sidewalk for days, that he had no money to go to school. He had to sweep this room, but because he knew Mrs. Ruffner, she was very strict with her cleaning. He knew properly how to clean the room, and he wasn't afraid of her. And he does list her as being one of his best friends. So I think the way he chose to look at everything makes him a hero to many people. And because he started Tuskegee, it was somewhat already intact, but he developed Tuskegee University to what it is today, the earlier stages of it. And because of that, I think that's why a lot of the HBCUs came into existence, the historical Black colleges and universities. And they do talk about, I never really understood. Before I graduated from University of Florida, I went to Florida A&M University, and the A&M is agricultural and mechanical. And I never really like put it all together until now from working on this project. You know, it's Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. So working with your hands, learning the vocations, learning the professions, domestic servants, all of that. That was his thing to me. I can't say that he was against education, because how can you start a school, develop a school, and you're against education? He just believed in what was close to you, is that you have your hands, work, you know, work, get it however you need to get it. That's how I look at it. But you had the opposers like W.B. Du Bois. He had his opinions about Booker T. Washington, and I've never really delved into all of that. And sometimes I do a talk back after the shows, and they like to ask, oh, what about W.B. Du Bois? And I'm like, I only focused on his autobiography, Up from Slavery. That's based on that. I say I don't get into all of that. It's a lot of debate, a lot of controversy. I only chose to work on his Up from Slavery autobiography because it's uplifting, and we need a lot of uplifting works. It doesn't always have to be about fights and arguments and what does this person believe and why and what did she say and who said that. Yeah. There's enough of that. You can pick up the daily newspaper and read all that, you know, or you can flip on the TV and hear it on every news break, in the commercials. I don't need any more of that. So that's what I chose, because I do have people that ask that, but when I answer with the remarks of that I just spoke, they don't have anything else to say. Like, you know, it's not nothing else for you to say, because I'm not going to get into that with you. So
the show sounds incredible, and I think everyone should, if you have the opportunity to be down in Florida,
yes
to check it out. So where is it again, and when is it running?
It is at what's known as Mad Cow Theater. It's located in Orlando, Central Florida, in Orlando, downtown Orlando, I believe, off of Church Street. And the first preview is next Thursday, February 17th, and it runs the 18th, 19th, and 20th, and then the second weekend as well, 25th, 26th, 27th. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the next 2 weekends in Orlando, Florida.
Congratulations on the show, on the theater company, on everything you've done. It's thank you for coming on today and introducing myself and the rest of the world to you and the great things you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. We have to keep in touch. So I would love to come back. Yeah, you know, any other interviews. So definitely. It's been a blast.
Awesome. Thank you. But before we end the interview, I always ask 3 questions of my guests. There's no right or wrong answer, but one of them we may judge you on a little bit. Well, the audience may judge you. I never judge, but we'll see what you say. All right, we'll give you an easy one to start with. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? Now, it could be a composer, lyricist, director, a producer, actor, stage manager, or, you know, it could be somebody famous or not famous, like a teacher. Has there been anybody who's, you know, had a good influence on you?
Sometimes, because I think I've kind of been asked this before. I was admitted to what was, they've ended it now, but it was called Lincoln Center Directors Lab. And we had to answer the same question. And, you know, as I said earlier, I never really had, I would say in my childhood, was not exposed to anything that led me to want to be an actor or introduced me to musical theater, didn't even introduce me to singing. I started singing. I was real shy, but I was in the band in high school. But my 12th grade year, I decided to enter the high school talent show. And I didn't even sing around like my family, like my parents. So they would leave the house to go somewhere and I would just blast down the walls. And I remember coming home one day and I was like, Mom, I'm going to enter the talent show. This was my 12th grade year. And she said, and do what? I said, sing. And so my mom was my first audition. She made me audition for her. I had to sing for her in the house to the record player. And she was like, oh, I didn't know you could sing. And then I actually won the talent show. So I actually won. And then I would say that was the start of it. I think Mrs. Parker, her comments were like, Darryl, you ever thought about, even though just that comment alone, and even though I wanted to be in the drama club, I really did nothing with them. Mm-hmm. And then it was just, I would say somewhere up in there where my gift was being exposed to me. I'll put it that way. And then at the time, The Wiz was becoming popular. I think the Broadway musical, my dad used to get these magazines, Jet magazine and Ebony magazine. And I would always flip through to look at the entertainment section. I remember seeing these Black characters that looked like Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz. Like I was just trying to put it all together, and they were Black, and I was like, wow, oh, that's Dorothy. And then I would look at the makeup on the Scarecrow's face and the Tin Man with silver, and I was like, this is like the Wizard of Oz, you know. And then the Michael Jackson Diana Ross movie came out, so all of that was in the back of my head, and I would say that was like, okay, there's something here, and some exposure to the entertainment industry. Yeah.
Nice. Lots of people, give famous people like Sondheim or Lin-Manuel or things like that. But I love when people choose like their mom or a school teacher or somebody, the unsung heroes of that will never get the recognition.
They don't.
Made a huge difference in
right, because you're right, because I definitely don't have a songwriting team. I wouldn't know. And that's not, to be insulting to anyone. I just was not opposed to that, Yeah.
Correct answer. 1 point. So awesome. Good start so far. Okay. So I have, this one's going to be, usually I have the second question, but I got a 2A and 2B. So 2A is architecturally, what is your favorite theater that you've been in? Like you've probably seen lots of theaters and you go, ooh, as an architectural background, which ones have you seen and go, I like that?
Oh my gosh. That's a difficult question.
Yep.
It's really, the Broadway houses are so old, so I can't even, some of them are large. I can't even say like of them. I could say one on size though. I would say one that struck me being large was Music Theater of Wichita. It was so huge. When I walked out on that stage, I was like, oh my God, it was just huge. I think they seat 2,200 people, I think. It was just huge. And I was like, it didn't really dawn on me until I saw it. I'm used to being in front of large audiences, but to see one that large, that was, and now I've been in others that large, but still. And then I remember the first job that I booked out of New York was Blackbirds of Broadway. It was a European tour and we were touring Germany. I believe it may have been Cologne, but we played the Philharmonic Hall and my mic went out like during the last number. But it was a hall that was sloped it was really like a concert hall and it sloped so deeply. But everybody could still hear me. And that's something that I think about, the design of that hall.
Yeah.
So those kind of are the ones that popped out. And then all the regional theaters, they're great venues, but I don't know that I could say any of them are any better than any other or something like that.
Well, I
So
like how you brought up the German one, because a lot of the theaters, in Europe were obviously built before technology and microphones, and you had to sing. And it had such a different layout than what we have now.
yes. Yeah, when the mic went out and you could tell that it went out, I was like, okay, well, just keep singing. And everybody, after the show was over, they were like, Darryl, we knew that your mic went out, but we could still hear you. And and these are like Germans and, just, and it was not a small space either. It wasn't. So, yeah.
That's very cool. I love that. My second part, which really is just a fluff question. Do you think you could still win the gold medal for doing splits today?
Let's see, today is Friday. I went to a dance class Wednesday nights, and splits were the stretch. That was one of the stretches, and nobody else in the room could do it, but I still did it.
Nice. Gold medals going your way.
Yes, the teacher even turned to me and was like, what? I still do it at home in my apartment. I'll sit on the floor in a heartbeat. Yeah. And and because I'm aging, we're all maturing. And if I'm always afraid if I don't stay stretched, that my muscles will tighten, and I just don't want to be like that, so yeah. And you never know, you get that call, somebody may call and say, Darryl, you still do a split? And yes, sure. That's right. Well, the job is $10,000. Okay, I will split right there. I'll be right there. Here we go. Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. Bonus points for still being able to do splits. So an extra point for that.
On both sides, left side and right side.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. I couldn't do it anymore to save my life.
Yeah.
All right, final question.
Yeah.
Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? Which is worse?
Food in the theater.
Okay. Have you got an experience with that?
I don't have any experience with that. Well, actually, one of the large venues in Jacksonville, the Florida Theater is a 1,900 seat venue, and my show Fred House was playing there. And we had a dinner break, and some of the cast decided to go to Burger King, and they walked through the stage door and walked across the stage with their food. And this particular venue has a union crew, so they got blasted out, and I think they threw their food in the garbage.
Oh, wow.
And I stayed out of it because they always say that I'm a taskmaster and I'm mean, but I'm used to this kind of stuff. So then you get a chance to experience from someone else. And I was like, you will learn eventually that I do know what I'm talking about, And but that was so long ago. That was really like 20 years ago. And I say cell phones because we're living in a world of social media now. And sometimes I know, like when Godspell was on Broadway, the revival, not too many years ago, I think there was a portion of the show where they were encouraged to take out their phones and post on social media, hey, make Godspell, take a picture of it or whatever, So I actually have a portion of a show that I'm working on that I really want to incorporate some modern technology in it to where it would have to go through a feeder before it gets on stage.
Yes.
But yeah, but I think that would be great to have just to get feedback from the audience to be able to put into production, especially to help get the word out, to market the word. So, because actors nowadays are booking jobs because they have 2 million followers.
Yeah.
So I hope to have 2 million followers. And we'll both have a lot of followers after this. So yeah.
Oh, for sure. Well, I'm going to make sure everybody knows about your Twitter account and all those things so they can follow you. But yeah, it's very cool when shows incorporate the audience and the technology in. That I have no problem with. It's when they just bring out their cell phones and answer them in the middle of the show.
Yeah,
that's a whole different story. So
I can't say that I've experienced that in anything that I've done in live theater. I know that other artists have. I think that Lawrence Fishburne stopped the show one time because somebody's phone or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you hear different stories of the different
Yeah.
celebrities that do that. So, but I have not had that. So I keep praying that that never.
Yes, knock on wood, it never happens to you, and I hope it never does.
Right, right.
Awesome. So all correct answers. You got 4 out of 3 points. Congratulations.
Oh wow, great.
No prizes. I got nothing. But
Okay.
you have bragging rights for whatever you want to use as bragging rights.
Yes.
Darryl, again, thank you so much for coming on, talking to myself, and letting the world know about you, what you do, and all the fantastic things.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, we were just speaking with Darryl Reuben Hall, artistic director, writer, actor, everything that you could, and supporter of youth theater in Florida. Tune in next week as we'll speak with another guest or guests about the life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I'm your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.